A.L.F.I.E. Prologue. The very nature of our audacious existence cannot and absolutely will not authorize anyone with the right to decide just who can coexist and or integrate onto the earth's plane. Resulting consequences not only to the purveyor of or its actor, but experienced by the whole, as effects and tremors persist and abound presently. I am of the opinion the challenge here is not about choice, but the effects experienced due to ideologies, societal structures, and authorities that are now in place. And then I write, shall the clay say or challenge the very thing that formed or created it, and ask, what makest thou? Ha! Caution is strongly advised for those sensitive to strict triggers. Let us begin. What's it all about? A.L.F.I.E. Because that's what I heard, and that's what I wrote. Next, 11:59 p.m. on the 27th of May. I heard the words to this song and I wrote it down. To the best of my ability, this is what I wrote. Day after day, I'm more confused, yet I look for the light through the pouring rain. You know that's a game that I hate to lose, and I'm feeling the strain. Ain't it a shame? Oh, give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I want to get lost in your rock and roll and drift away. Oh, give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I want to get lost in your rock and roll and drift away. The first name I came across was Clarence Carter, and as I listened to it, it sounded very familiar. And then Dobie Gray I wrote down, and then the incomparable Michael Bolton. Love his sound. And for this rendition, he worked with David Foster, who is a renowned record producer and worked with many renowned various artists. But I continue. I'm calling this video offering A.L.F.I.E, an acronym, but the actual name of a play and film in 1962 and 1966, respectively. The premise of this offering will shadow more of the film in which Michael Caine starred in British cinema in 1966. 1966. 22. Life path? Anyone? Anyone? I continue. It speaks of a self-serving, non-committal womanizer, more specifically, a philanderer, whose voyeuristic actions led him to both single and married or in between liaisons or sexual encounters. A.L.F.I.E, cloaked with a false sense of security and self-assurance, but right now is filled with varying layers of physical, psychological, and emotional traumas, consequenced by his actions and the lack of boundaries. I write next, here to educate, inspire, and for observational purposes only, esoteric in nature. But first, I hear now this. I culled it from a song which I'll name shortly. I never thought through love we'd be making one as lovely as she. But isn't she lovely, made from love? I can't believe what God has done. Through us, he's given life to one. But isn't she lovely, made from love? Stevie Wonder, 1976. Isn't she lovely? Thank you, Stevie. Next, A.L.F.I.E. I got this on May the 31st, 2024. I'll give the meaning of the acronym as I conclude the synopsis of this as I understand it and see it It begins like this. The film. A.L.F.I.E, who is the main character in this film, is now ending an affair with a married woman. Her name is Sadie. He actually has a girlfriend whose name is Gilda, who has his child. The child's name is Malcolm. Sidebar. You're not going to have to remember all the names, but I do want you to keep track of A.L.F.I.E.'s experiences. How about that? He loves Malcolm, his son, but won't commit to marriage with Gilda. So she concedes and marries a bus conductor whose name is Humphrey. And he accepts Malcolm as his very own. Gilda now withholds interactions between A.L.F.I.E and his son. And then I write the word sidebar. Though 1966, this storyline is very familiar. Even under the demand of child support, parents today aren't allowed to interact or sometimes even see their children. I digress. I now continue. At this time, A.L.F.I.E receives the results of a health exam or health checkup, which finds shadows at various points on his lungs. It is concluded he has contracted TB or tuberculosis. With life now lifing, thanks, Mammy Water. With life now lifing around him, he now suffers a mental breakdown, and he is segregated to a sanitarium. Next, while in this recovery facility, he meets and eventually befriends another register whose name is Harry. And he's there with his wife, who is now visiting him there. And as I would presume, A.L.F.I.E, his diagnosis must be better, because he decides to frolic and make out with one of the nurses. Yep, sexual encounter. His friend, Harry, now scolds him for pursuing such conquests of philandering. Next, I wrote, A.L.F.I.E is now released, and he returns to the occupation of being a driver. The vehicle of choice was a Rolls Royce. And along the way, he sees a lady whose name is Ruby, and she's in partner with an older gentleman whose name was not given, and they're visiting the London Tower. He finds a way to entertain and interact and, yes, flirt with Ruby, and she gives him her address and her phone number. Next, A.L.F.I.E decides to go back to the sanitarium and visit his friend Harry. While there, Lily, his wife, is also there, and she asks A.L.F.I.E for a ride to her destination to avoid the trains. He agrees, but while together, we find A.L.F.I.E schmoozing and now seducing, yes, Harry's wife into a sexual encounter. I continue. And now back riding along. I can hear riding along in the automobile. That's what I hear. He now sees a redhead whose name is Annie. She's a hitchhiker who he eventually gets the opportunity to catch up with. She's thankful for his help, and she becomes his housemate. She begins to do his laundry, to mop his floors, and yes, to cook for him. Fringe benefits indeed, up and until he forced her out in anger. Such is life, right? Lily, the wife of Harry at the sanitarium, reaches out to A.L.F.I.E to let him know their one-time encounter has produced, yep, if you're ahead of me, slow down, I'm getting there, a pregnancy. And they decided to perform, I wrote, and A.L.F.I.E. To break down A.L.F.I.E. A.L.F.I.E. I saw this on the 2nd of June, 12:53 a.m. And this is what I wrote down. A, another. L, life. F, forbidden. I, integration. E, earth. Another life forbidding integration on earth. I'm going to go back to the prologue. Let me see if I can find that page. I wrote it down because this comes to mind. The first line of the prologue. The very nature of our audacious existence cannot and absolutely will not authorize anyone with the right to decide just who can coexist and integrate onto the earth's plane. I now continue. This speaks not only of what you see this to be, that's why I cautioned of triggers, but life in general. For someone to decide your life is no longer of value. Need I say more? I'm moving on. I continue. The day to remove this fetus from Lily, A.L.F.I.E. decides to step outside to take a walk. And while out, he now sees his former girlfriend, Gilda, who married that bus conductor, who with his son and now their new child, which happens to be their daughter, to be baptized. Next, I write sidebar. The universe will conspire events and circumstances to get your attention. But will you be in a place to receive the sometimes nuanced, subtle flashes? But I continue. A.L.F.I.E. returns to the scene of another life forbidden to integrate on the earth. The sight of this removed fetus quite traumatizes both himself and Lily. And the stressors, remember, lifing, the stressors over the loss of Annie, the hitchhiker, and his first conquest, Sadie, who was a married woman. A.L.F.I.E. at this point decides to change his ways, to create boundaries and focus towards committal. Going forward, he goes towards Ruby that was with that older gentleman. He gets there, but he finds her in bed with another guy who happens to be younger. Next, he goes to Sadie, but since their last meet, she has since remarried. The A.L.F.I.E., I'm calling it, or another life forbidden integration on earth, helped to bring to bear the reality of his physical, psychological, and emotional traumas left to be dealt with. And then I wrote the ABCs, if you will. The cause of his actions, A. The lack of boundaries, B. And the result and layers of consequences, C. All necessary to bring about that abrupt change, tower-like, if you will, or to simply suffer heavy consequences indeed. The conclusion of this film, A.L.F.I.E. finds him unable to reconcile or recultivate relations with any of his prior conquests. While on his way, he comes across a stray dog and takes this dog home to care for. I close with this thought. In regards to the A.L.F.I.E., I'm going to say it again. Another life forbidden integration on the earth. In regards to the A.L.F.I.E., When actions aren't sided with needed boundaries to avert not so pleasant consequences, the unexpected and the unwanted tend to occur. But before you finalize any decision, I have a PSA. What is found in the womb, if we're speaking of this specific act, what is found in the womb could be the very next, and I put ... could be the very next. There were a number of messages ago, maybe a year and a half ago, where I spoke about this process, this procedure, and taking that step. All the while we've been waiting for answers to cures and new intelligent creations and the like. I carefully say now, could we have very well foregone some of those instances by our actions? I continue. Could be the very next, or the progenitor to, or the creator of. The universe now awaits your next action, your decision. I say again, another life, forbidden integration on earth. And I write the words, choose wisely. A couple of options I wrote down for this particular act, because I say again now, it's not just this act, it's the action of taking it upon yourself to decide whose life on this earth is worthy to continue. I'm going to read the prologue again. I know you're tired of hearing it, but the very nature of our audacious existence cannot and absolutely will not authorize anyone with the right to decide who can coexist and or integrate on this earth's plane. The options I wrote are these. Surrogate parenting as an option. Adoption as an option. Foster parenting as an option. And then I could hear safe harbor. It's either safe harbor or safe haven. But I put down safe harbor because I remember when in Chicago, there was a period of time I heard on the news that new mothers that didn't feel that they could offer the best to their child could go to the fire department, and they were making boxes where they could leave that child and not suffer consequences that could really be bad if they did it another way. So it's either safe haven or safe harbor. In this instance, safe harbor talks about children that are now older, having been exploited, and now they're being caught up in the system. But this protects them from being treated like a criminal. A.L.F.I.E was what I was given. A.L.F.I is what I have shared. Thank you for your time. This is Charles. We are hypecentral.org. And as always, be blessed.